So, this is the inaugural first banter-laden episode of the Cigar Snob podcast. In the first podcast, we had an interview with Hamlet Paredes from Rocky Patel Premium Cigars, who made Tabaquero, and now most recently the 25th year?
25th year, yep.
So, in this episode, we have people from the Cigar Snob crew to talk about some of the news of the day and cigars and other things from our personal lives that you might be privy to if you were our friends, and now you are through this podcast. Welcome to the friend zone.
What's going on, guys?
So I am Nick Jimenez, the senior editor at Cigar Snob magazine. I'm joined by Eric.
Yo.
Eric Calvino is the editor-in-chief and publisher of the magazine, and Ivan Ocampo.
What's up, people?
Ivan is our photo producer, art editor,
Director of stuff
and casting and fashion and shirt acquisition and all kinds of
shirt acquisition.
Crucial. By the way, you're wearing a nice one today.
I am wearing a nice one. I got this T-shirt at I think it's pronounced Seu Jorge.
Oof.
The Brazilian guy from
fancy.
Steve Zissou from The Life Aquatic.
Very nice.
Did a cover concert of Bowie songs. So we're gonna start on the topic of Eric and Ivan's recent trip to Italy. If you've had a chance to look over the most recent issue of Cigar Snob magazine, you know that the travel story all centers on a photo shoot that the two of you guys did in Italy. So tell us a little bit about that trip and what were some of the highlights for the two of you.
It's Eric and Ivan's excellent adventure.
Ooh.
Basically. No, it it was a behind the scenes of the most recent photo shoot or photo shoots. Took weeks to plan. A lot of people involved. Just an incredible shoot, and the adventure is all laid out in the travel story. So, what do you think about it, Ivan?
Well, I think it was great. We had a great sponsor. So General Cigars sponsored.
Awesome.
Our shoot. We had great weather. Yeah. We had great hosts while we were in Italy.
The Renaissance Tuscany,
Renaissance Tuscany.
Outstanding,
you can
great
read about
place.
it in the issue, but I mean, it was a beautiful, beautiful, exciting trip.
Yeah, and then Cinque Terre, the scenes there. If you're looking for the spelling of that, Cinque is Cinque, Terre Terre, but check that out, Google that. The views from that place are just incredible. Highly recommended. Everything we did was fun. Bologna, the food was crazy. You know, we always have like bolognese. We always hear like pasta bolognese. Mm-hmm. I went to where that stuff is made. Holy crap. Food was just amazing.
How close is the bolognese that somebody who's never been to Italy to what you had, the bolognese cuisine that you had in Italy?
So first off, the pasta is always fresh pasta. And it's usually, when you're having the bolognese, it's usually tagliatelle. Typically, you can have it with anything, but that's what seemed to be the norm there. And every place makes their own pasta, the places I went to. And then the other thing is there's no red sauce in the bolognese, which here typically you have bolognese sauce and it's got some red sauce in it, some tomatoes. They don't. It's all a meat-based sauce. So that was a difference. But also my host out there in Bologna was a friend of mine, Fabrizio Lazzarini, who owns a small restaurant out there in the country, but his mom cooks, and it was just outrageous. The restaurant is called Bar al Trattoria al Botteghino. That's what it's called, Trattoria al Botteghino. It's in a small town called Botteghino di Zocca, and just unbelievable food. I've been dreaming about that food since we left.
Yeah, so. I know in this last issue, not this one that we're talking about now, but the one before, we had an interview with Domenico Vacca, the fashion designer who's from Italy, and he mentioned that the Italian food in Italy, even being in New York, was one of the things that he missed the most. That he's just not really acclimated to the heavy on the red sauce thing. Although he did say that the one thing he pointed, I forget whether this made it into the Q&A in the magazine or the profile, but he did mention that the one Italian American thing that he's fallen in love with is meatballs.
No kidding.
Somehow meatballs hooked him. But other than that, he's always jonesing. What about you, Ivan? Any highlights? I know you stayed there for a little bit longer.
Well, as far as the food front, I'm of much simpler taste. The coffee, bread, and wine for me.
Yeah.
is above all the best that I've had. And I like Carrabba's here in the United States, so, so I don't ask for much.
So how about this, just to bring it back to our bread and butter of cigars, given the coffee you guys had and the food that you saw was common, if you're packing cigars for that trip, what profiles are you going over there for pairing purposes?
So, first, before you even get to the pairing reason, first, they mostly have Cuban cigars there. In terms of what you can buy in a store. They do have some Nicaraguan brands and some Dominican brands, but they're a lot less common. So don't pack any Cubans because you'll be able to buy them over there, is number one. And then number two, I think that anytime you're having those big Tuscan wines like we had, like the Brunello de Montalcino and Barolos from the Piemonte region, whenever you're having those big Italian wines, you definitely want a cigar that's going to stand up to it. So I do like smoking Nicaraguan cigars. I like the Oliva Serie V with those wines. I like the AJ Fernandez, like a San Lotano or a New World with those heavy Italian wines. Those are the things I like with those wines. How about you?
We drank some Prosecco too, so the lighter
Franciacorta
and
well,
Franciacorta. So
the Connecticut's did
the Connecticut's and the lighter stuff, like some of the Fuente Angel Share stuff, and even H2K from my father was excellent.
Yeah, but it's tough to find something that those things don't pair with. They're so freaking good.
So speaking of what to pack for the trip, Eric, you wrote the story, and one of the things that you mentioned in the story is how people were dressed. There's a scene that you're sort of painting there about how impeccably dressed people were.
Yes, especially in the north.
Yeah, how well prepared do you think you were to blend in? And if you had it to do over again, would you go out and look for some more Italian-y stuff?
I'd probably change my shoes. I think that's where I was lacking. You know, like over here we wear sneakers, we wear sort of casual dress shoes. Over there they take it very seriously. If you don't mind looking like the tourist, which is fine, we most of the time look like tourists. That's okay. But if you're trying to blend in, go get yourself a good pair of Italian shoes. The clothes they all look so good. it's like everyone's thin. Everyone wears this tight-fitting clothes. I am not the thinnest cat, so the tight-fitting clothes I struggle with. So that's why I go with shoes. I think shoes make it work for me.
I kind of like your Chevy Chase vacation look that you had going on.
Yes. That was total fucking shit.
But yeah, the colorful sports jackets and blazers that everybody had really stood out and made everybody look sharp.
So we're going to shift gears here to what we're smoking. We've been smoking this cigar since just before we turned on the mics. We are smoking the Undercrown Sungrown, which, before we get into our personal thoughts on this, I'll give people listening a little bit of background. This is a pretty recent release. It's from Drew Estate, Ecuador Sumatra Seed, Sun-Grown Wrapper. The binders, Connecticut River Valley, stock cut, cured, sun-grown Habano, complementing a powerhouse blend of Nicaraguan premium fillers, which
that is from their website,
directly from their press release. We're smoking the Belicoso, right?
Yes.
This is a 6x52. Comes in boxes of 25, blended by Willie Herrera, who is somebody who readers of the magazine are, I imagine, very familiar with, those who read it for the articles.
Yes.
So, thoughts on this?
I love it. I like the cigar from the second we tried it at IPCPR. I think it's creamy. It's got just a little bit of pepper. It's got a good cedar base, I think. I love it. That cream cedar pepper combination always works, and Willie's, that's kind of like right in his wheelhouse, you know?
The cedar is what stands out to me, because outside of the things with Willie's name on them, that's not something that you necessarily expect from Drew Estate. And so it's kind of a cool, change of pace from, I don't know but just the core Drew Estate, not tied to Willie's identity lines. And it's
even just the Undercrown line as a whole, right?
Right.
Except for the Shade and the Sungrown, which are the two newest. The Undercrown has that very heavy broadleaf, sort of sticky sweet taste. and this is a complete departure from it. If you're thinking where this cigar sits, I think it's, take the Undercrown and scrap it completely and go with the Herrera Teli and then move it more towards the Undercrown, and that's kind of where you're at with this.
Strength-wise.
Yeah.
I think it's medium to full, so with a little bit of pepper, but it's great.
It's soft. It's not an overbearing pepper, so it's very creamy. I think cream and cedar are two things that jump out for me on this cigar.
You concur in there, Ivan?
Concur.
Cool. What'd you smoke over Thanksgiving?
I smoked a Serie V Lancero that I love. I smoked that on holidays a lot. I like that cigar. And I also smoked an Angel Share. Those were my 2 Thanksgiving Day smokes. Right. So Angel Share, sorry, that's the Opus X, Fuente Opus X Angel Share.
I had a Davidoff Yamasa, and I think that's all I had time for.
Yeah, because you fried a turkey. What'd you do?
We roasted the turkey, but I had 22 people over, so that's my record so far.
Oh, and you hosted.
And I hosted, yeah. So I had a bunch of people over, doing a lot of cooking, cleaning up.
Lucky to get one cigar in.
Got one in at the end. That's about it.
I was hanging out. We hung out at my mom's house, which is what we do every year. And yeah, I was not doing any hosting. So I was just drinking and smoking.
Yeah.
How about you, Nick?
I went the Davidoff Series R, the 702 series.
Sweet, the little Corona.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was a smaller Thanksgiving than usual. We have my dad he's one of 10 siblings, but most of them were out of town for this one. So, condensed version of the Jimenez family gathering, which is kind of a welcome break.
So, what does a condensed version look like?
Condensed version is like 25 people.
There you go.
Yeah. Where when it's big time full blown Jimenez, we're talking somewhere in the 100 to 125.
Wow.
Good Lord.
Range. Too many people.
That's
too many people.
Yeah. That's.
Do you guys did you cook any of your? I know that you mentioned that you roasted, but did you roast turkey? Did you have some other contribution to the menu?
No, yeah, we did the whole menu. So roasted turkey, but we did have people bring over sides. So we do the Cuban Thanksgiving at my house. So we brought over yuca, black beans, rice, plantains.
Which is something that I'd be curious to know how many of the people listening to this are going to be familiar with the Cuban Thanksgiving, right? Which is,
black beans and rice, yuca with your turkey.
Just it's generally just your New Year's Eve meal, swapping out the pork for the turkey.
Out the
That's
pork.
it.
If you're making a real effort to be less Cuban, you're swapping out the pork for the turkey.
Yeah, I think lately we've been getting the stuffing, getting into that stuffing and sweet potato casserole, which was our contribution along with my wife's pumpkin mess dessert. Which I'm a huge fan of.
What does that mean, pumpkin mess?
It's basically a pumpkin pie, but as if you would thrown it against a wall. And
yummy.
It's freaking delicious because it's all kind of mixed together. It's awesome. It's hard to describe, but aside from it doesn't do pie crust, so it's pumpkin pie with cake mixed in. It's outrageous. Can't even describe it. It's so damn good.
Where did that come from? Is that
it's a friend of hers. A friend of hers, Laura, I think came up with that recipe years ago, and she's been making it for me ever since.
Nice.
Shout out to Laura.
Shout out to Laura. Also, Thanksgiving tradition, definitely a lot more common than
black beans and rice.
Than the black beans and rice. What were your game notes from the football games that you might have watched over the Thanksgiving break?
Well, the Thanksgiving Day game was not very good. The Cowboys, right? Getting beat. So that wasn't very good. We watched a little bit of that. But talking about football, I can't talk about anything other than my Hurricanes getting beat.
Or my fantasy football team getting beat for the third week in a row.
For what? Third in a row?
Third in a row. I might be wearing a dress this year, guys.
Are you on a streak, or did you?
I'm on a losing streak.
Losing streak. Yeah.
Is it dress every year?
It's a dress. Yeah, they dress you up like a chick. So.
How many times have you worn the dress?
Once. No, twice. I've worn it twice. But it always happens. I come out of the gate, full steam ahead. I'm in first place. I don't get any waiver wire acquisitions, any fantasy football nerds out there. you're with me. You're in first place. Don't get any guys, and then mid-year, your team is struggling, and that's where I'm at. So I'm stalling. I need a big comeback. We'll see what happens.
Throw in your recommendations to Ivan on what sleeper he should pick up. Yeah. Where should they do that? How should they communicate with you?
Or where I should buy my blouse.
We may have to get back in touch with Domenico Vaca for that one.
Yes.
So you brought up the Canes. They did lose, but all in all,
there's still hope
heading into the ACC championship game.
Yeah. We got a big game on Saturday night. Big game against Clemson. It's gonna be tough. Clemson is a loaded team, so we'll see. Canes are coming in hobbling a bit and not feeling as good as they were feeling right before that Pitt game.
But relative to, I mean, as a diehard Canes fan, or diehard Canes fans, both of you, hobbling is relative to this season. But in terms of how this season has looked compared to
this is as good as it gets. So we're just happy to get here.
Yeah, we're so happy. The freaking turnover chain is huge. I mean, the team's doing great.
I'm not exactly sure how many years we've been in the ACC, but this is the first time they reached the ACC championship game.
Correct.
When we first joined the ACC, and I say we because I'm a big Miami Hurricane homer.
Yeah.
But you're a Golden Panther.
But I'm a Golden Panther.
We thought we were going to win that every year. We thought it was like, oh, okay, it'll be us and FSU every year.
It hasn't been the case.
Hasn't happened.
Hasn't been the case.
Had a run of shitty coaches, honestly, but we love Mark Richt. Love what the team looks like this year. Very happy.
I'm happy to be in the game. So
moving on to some other things that are in the news. In our outline for this podcast, I probably should have come up with another phrase to introduce this, but I'm going to run with the ongoing sexy time scandals.
Oh boy.
There's no reason for people to get their news from this podcast. I don't think that's think that's necessary.
Not at all.
But I would be interested to get your thoughts on especially the things going on in Congress, because I think that's where it starts to not that people should or shouldn't care about sexy time scandals, but that is sort of where it starts to have ripple effects into everything else, right?
Well, I think first, some people are probably a little lost right now as to what you're calling sexy time scandal.
You're right. So everything ranging from Harvey Weinstein, which is where I'm sort of painting that as having less direct impact on anything other than just like cultural views of sex and what's appropriate and what's not and all of that. And then on the other hand, and more recently, the more politically tinged things, right, with the Roy Moores and the what's his name, John Conyers, who I think also is being accused of using congressional staffing funds to pay for settlements.
That's just disturbing stuff. But to me, right now, it just feels like each side is dredging up stuff about someone on the other side, and it's starting to become noise to me. I don't know if everyone else feels the same way.
Right, it's sort of like the ongoing politicization of everything.
Yeah, and so, you start to, once they start talking about George Bush in a wheelchair touching someone inappropriately, which was just ridiculous.
David Copperfield.
It just seems ridiculous. Once you start doing that, it starts to become noise. But then you hear one like, Conyers, and you go, Jesus, this isn't noise, right? This is a real problem. But I don't know. It's been happening for so long.
And it's a difficult thing to talk about because so many of these things are just sort of like, there's a huge element of hearsay to a lot of it.
Yeah.
And at some point, right, if enough people are coming out, you figure, okay, that sort of increases the likelihood. But at what point do you say you can't be a senator because too many people are accusing you of a thing? I don't know. To me, it seems like a standard we wouldn't apply in a lot of other places. But then you don't want to not take it seriously either.
I mean, there's talk, as high as the president with this kind of problem.
Right.
So
speaking of the president, aside from any sexy time scandals that people may want to bring up with him, has a far more entertaining feud going on with LeVar Ball.
It's a Twitter feud, right?
It's a Twitter feud, but I think it's becoming a snail mail feud.
Oh.
LeVar Ball is talking about sending him a pair of his son's shoes, the Zo2s.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the question is, if you're Donald Trump, how do you deal with LeVar Ball? And if you're LeVar Ball, how do you deal with Donald Trump?
Well, I think LeVar Ball is winning no matter what here, right? Because whenever you're punching up like that, you're always going to win if the guy acknowledges anything.
Yeah.
the only loser in all of this is Trump. I don't know if he cares.
He doesn't care. Never decides to take the high road, and that's what he should be taken with him.
Exactly. Yeah, the high road is not his road of choice. But listen, I feel like we're getting too far into other.
Yeah.
Can we come back to this cigar?
Sure.
So how do we feel? Things have calmed down a bit.
Yeah.
In terms of the cigar,
some of the cedar has faded for me.
Yep.
It's maybe taken on kind of like a leathery character, but and some of the pepper has faded too. So it's mellowed without it's changed, which is something that for me anyway, too often when cigars change over time, some of that change is unpleasant. This is just sort of it's two different things that I've enjoyed in very different ways. So
yeah, it definitely took a change. It took a turn. It's still very good in a different way. I don't know if we have enough time in terms of recording time, whether it'll change again. I do like it when a cigar makes that sort of second jump, either back or in another direction. I do like it because they keep you entertained. Some people don't. Some people prefer their cigar to be consistent from beginning to end.
That's usually me.
Yeah. I like the changes. They keep me entertained as long as it changes to something good. And in this case, it has.
Yeah, I feel like it stayed pretty consistent. And the burn, I know nobody can see it, but my burn's been excellent. So the construction's impeccable on it.
Yep.
No doubt.
Definitely.
The construction has been perfect.
Things that were not perfectly constructed. The Justice League movie did not do well. Again, no need to get into some of that news. But the story is, in a nutshell, it cost something like $500 million to make and brought in under 100 at the box office opening night. Or opening weekend, which when you consider where that puts it among other comic book movies, not a big deal, but people are talking about it as sort of like signaling the death of that genre. So my question is, are you or have you ever been into that genre? And when you were kids, what were the go-to superheroes here? And what movie would be most what character would be most likely to draw you to a theater to see something just for nostalgia's sake?
That's a tough one, but just for a second on the Justice League, my kids, I have two boys. Yeah. This is like that movie is marketed to them. They're 11 and 9. That is the perfect age for this kind of movie. They haven't bugged me about going to see it, which tells me something.
And they would have about other ones.
Oh, they do all the time. I mean, the Star Wars movies come out, they're immediately, Papa, let's go see it. They mentioned it a couple times early on when it was being advertised, but they weren't even on top of it like it's being released, let's go see it. So that says something. Just didn't resonate with their core audience. As far as what superhero movies I liked as a kid, holy crap. I mean, when we were kids, Superman was the thing.
Yeah, all the...
Superman was...
Batman and,
Yeah, but like our childhood, let's say when we were 12... Mm-hmm. It was Christopher Reeve's Superman. That was it.
Yeah.
Superman is not...
Yeah.
I think for nostalgia's sake, I think that would maybe bring me back. But it'd have to be so well done that my kids would be into it. And I'd want to go back to it, right?
So,
I don't know.
For nostalgia's sake, not superhero related, but I'm dying to go see Blade Runner because I was a big Blade Runner fan.
Yeah.
When it first came out, so I'm looking forward to seeing that.
You detoured this thing, man. You went, wow,
yeah,
no superheroes.
Sorry, but no, very relevant.
We're going with Brooklyn Decker.
Sorry, no, it's out now, and I can't tell you the last movie that I went to go see in the theater. I steal all my movies right now.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. What?
Caught King Kong. Pirate style this weekend.
Stop saying pirate style.
But,
Ivan of the Caribbean over here.
But yeah, I'm looking forward for Blade Runner.
No, so, what about wait, we have to talk a little bit about Stranger Things, right?
Sure.
Am I just too late on that?
Have we all finished it? Or are you behind, Ivan?
I'm behind. I'm 2 episodes in on season 2. So
I loved it. So I won't give you any spoiler on the thing, but it's a kid's pseudo horror, so it always ends well, right?
Right.
So you know that. And that's what I tell my wife whenever she's no, but I don't want to see the kids getting this and that, getting his body getting hijacked by some dimensional monster. Yeah. I don't know what you call it. I'm like, don't even worry about it. It's gonna end well.
But it's funny. I know multiple people who even adults who won't watch it because they think it will freak them out too much. And it's really more of like a...
Sissies.
There's that. But it's sort of like a love letter to Goonies and Stand By Me.
And E.T., right?
Yeah, which the makers of the thing, I think, they grew up in the 90s. So it's kind of funny how people who grew up in the 90s, myself included, identify with some of these 80s movies. And now everything just moves so quick. You know, you having kids who are around 10 years old, I mean, what they're looking at now, it's not like before where they might identify with some of the same stuff as like, you know, they make an 8-year-old friend or a 6-year-old friend. Okay, we're into some of the same stuff. Now it's like the generations in terms of media and what you're consuming and what you're into are a few years long. And then it's a whole new crop of stuff that comes in.
Yep. Anyway, I loved it.
Yeah. No, I would recommend that up and down to whoever. Do we have any other movie recommendations, especially from Ivan's Pirate Booty? Things that you would recommend really highly, like you got to go see this, or you definitely should not see this.
You just watched Kong
Island,
how was,
right?
What was
Kong
that called?
Skull Island.
It was pretty good for the portion that I stayed awake for.
The effects are really the only thing about that movie that are worth watching. But I thought the story was weak.
I was just at the movies to see 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
What the hell is that, Nick?
Yeah.
Greek.
It's actually, so I had no idea what it was. I was bothering my wife.
I don't know if you were talking about what you saw on your way to the movie or...
We took a long drive to the movies outside of Ebbing, Missouri. I had no idea what it was. I was bothering my wife because I kept forgetting the name of it, so I was calling it a few street signs north of Kansas or something like that.
Fair.
But yeah, it's like a sort of murder mystery, quirky thing. The second half was better than the first half, but I think if you're into like Wes Anderson stuff, especially the second half of the movie is pretty solid.
Who's in that?
Woody Harrelson plays a cop in it.
Oh, okay.
And I'm blanking on the name of but it's an ensemble cast. The little guy from Game of Thrones is in it. Peter Dinklage. The little man, person.
Okay.
Is little man okay, or do you have to say person all the time?
That's a good question. I think that's a topic for the next podcast.
I think that is. Yeah. We're going to spend at least 15 minutes on that in episode 3. So before we close out, this is also recommendation stuff, but we're not limiting it to movies. What do we want to tell people who are closing out this podcast that they should check out next?
Right now, I'm reading The Big Short. I know that, again, I'm late as usual. I saw the movie, but I'm reading the book, and I love it. Love it. Also,
you doing audiobook or?
Yeah. And before that, I read or heard. I know it feels weird saying I read when I was listening to it in my car, but I had a couple of long drives, so I heard the Gene Wilder sort of memoir called "Kiss Me Like a Stranger." I thought that was really good. If you're a fan of Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles and things like that, his insight and behind the scenes stuff about what was going on in the writing and his relationship with Richard Pryor and all that stuff was great. So I'd recommend that. It's called Kiss Me Like a Stranger.
Cool. So I know most of you guys here in the office know my car was broken into this week. Luckily for me, they didn't steal my golf clubs, but they did steal all of my sunglasses, which I keep in my car. So
three pair.
3 pairs.
You need new Cigar Snob sunglasses.
So new Cigar Snob sunglasses, but I also need a pair of golf glasses. So I went out and purchased a pair of Oakley Thin Link Prism sunglasses, which I haven't.
Ivan, for those who don't know, is our resident golfer.
So they say they take 10 strokes off your score. So I can't wait to receive.
Can I buy 2 pair?
So we'll see. I haven't gotten them yet, but I'm excited to get them. So.
I'm going to report back next episode on how many strokes it actually shaved off. I'm going to recommend that people get on YouTube and search the phrase Japanese slippery stairs. This was it got some play on...
Wait, for those of you that don't know, Nick is our resident YouTube expert.
Yeah, there's a lot of YouTube consumption happening on my laptop. Japanese slippery stairs is exactly what it sounds like. It's a Japanese game show. A group of maybe 6 Japanese people in color-coded jumpsuits do their best to beat each other up a flight of very slippery stairs.
I'm in.
And it's awesome.
I mean,
it's great. If you're into people getting hit in the nuts, falling, being very frustrated, and having a whole studio full of people laugh at them, Japanese slippery stairs is the way to go.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Nick.
Closing
really
thoughts?
Appreciate that. No, I hope these guys enjoyed it.
Yeah.
We want to keep this going. I think you want to give a little. I don't know. Did you describe what we were doing in the last one a little bit? That we were mixing it up.
Yeah. So I mean, this podcast will be a bit of a mix of the sorts of things that you might expect to see in the magazine. So, like we said in the first episode, was Hamlet Paredes, an interview with him, and get into his history in the cigar industry and his blending process and all that. We'll do some of this sort of thing, and then we'll also do anything from reviews of products that might make sense to review in audio form to interviews with guys who, or not just guys, but people who happen to smoke but are not necessarily in the industry. So, we have some interviews lined up for this next issue of the magazine, and we'll make sure to record those in a way that lends itself to this. So, if you're into the magazine, if you're into that kind of variety of content, this is a thing to subscribe to. So
cool. And next week you're doing Boston.
Yep, we'll be in Boston next week working on the next issue's travel story, which I've never been to Boston.
Oh, good. I love Boston.
I'll be a Boston virgin.
Well, anyway, if anyone listening is out in Boston, how should they contact you to give you a recommendation or meet up with you out there?
My email is njimenez, so NJIMENEZ at cigarsnobmag.com. You can email me recommendations on that or any other story ideas you might have. And if you have feedback on this podcast or the magazine or anything else that you might want read in the podcast or published in the magazine, you can get to us at feedback at cigarsnobmag.com.
All right.
So that's a wrap.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us.
All right.